This program is brought to you by Mass Marketing, fueling the future of L&D.
Around the world, new ESG regulations are tightening, from the UK's mandatory climate disclosures to Australia's incoming sustainability reporting standards. Organisations are under growing pressure to report ESG performance with accuracy and transparency. Research from Kineo, a provider of ESG training, shows that many companies are struggling. Not because they don't care, but because employees often lack the knowledge and skills needed to collect and report the right data. Without training, ESG reporting risks becoming a box-ticking exercise, or worse, exposing companies to accusations of greenwashing and regulatory penalties. To unpack why ESG reporting is proving so difficult, what the risks are and how training can help, I'm joined by the author of the research, Celine Dang from Kineo. Welcome, Celine. Thanks for joining me. ESG reporting is becoming a regulatory necessity. What's making it so hard for organisations to get right?
Hi, Rob. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the question. Firstly, I must say that I wouldn't call myself as an ESG technical expert. That's something in the future, maybe, but my role and the work I'm doing now is more to do with communications, research, and understanding how organizations are grappling with ESG and how best to help them integrate ESG training into their ESG practices, and also in long-term strategy and to communicate on the impact that it creates. So with that lens, from what I've seen, and the challenges are not only in the rules or regulations themselves, it also in the translation, in the communications. So as you know, regulations are evolving quickly and each market has its own standards. Some industry and sectors also have their own standards and frameworks. KPMG's global survey last year found that over 70% of CEOs admit their companies are not fully prepared for the new sustainability reporting requirements. Add to that is the challenge of siloed data and the lack of shared understanding across teams. So finance team might see ESG in one way, HR in another way, and the operation team something else entirely different. So it becomes less about lack of intent and more about capability, communication, and alignment.
What are the risks if ESG reporting isn't accurate or well understood internally?
That's a really good question, Rob. And actually, it links back to what I mentioned earlier about one of the biggest challenge being translation, communication of purpose and strategy. External communication, in one hand, is very important. ESG initiatives has to meet the expectation of external stakeholders like investors, customers, and partners, right, who are looking closely at transparency, and companies need to communicate about that. But equally important and often overlooked is how it's communicated internally. It's important that the people across the business truly understand what ESG means, what the company ESG goals are, why it matters, and how their work connects to it. If employees don't understand these things, the work feel less meaningful. And what then, when that happens, then the company lose engagement with people. So what we found recently is in PwC research, it shows that more than 80% of employees want to work for companies that genuinely take sustainability seriously. And so I think the real opportunity and also the challenge is communication. It's about making sure the purpose of ESG reporting is clearly explained, not only to external stakeholders, but to every team internally. People need to know what's included in ESG reporting, how does their role contribute to the results, and how does this connect to the wider company long-term direction. And I think that's why training comes in. When employees are equipped with ESG knowledge, they can translate their daily actions and decisions into meaningful contribution to the company and also to the reporting process as well. Let me tell you one example. we had the opportunity to work with a global brand to build sustainability learning solution for them. And actually that solution is an award-winning solution. After they roll out the first sustainability learning model for the first time, just after a few weeks, 60% of the employees who completed that model reported that they have much better understanding of the company's sustainability strategy, and that they see the alignment with company's direction more clearly, and they feel they work much more meaningful. So, and then you can imagine how it translates into companies' employment engagement, right?
This really leads into my next question is, why do you think many companies still treat ESG as a compliance box tick rather than a business priority?
That's a very good question. I think part of it comes down to the nature of business itself. At the end of the day, I mean, most organizations are measured on financial outcome, right? Profitability, shareholder return, growth. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you can't call a business sustainable if it's not financially viable, right? And also for NGO or social enterprises, the same principle applies. Without surplus, they can't deliver on their purpose. The challenge is that many companies stop there. So they view ESG as just another compliance exercise and something you do to satisfy regulators or to avoid reputational risk, rather than recognizing its role in driving long-term value. In our recent white paper, Bridging the ESG Skill Gaps, we highlighted that ESG is actually a catalyst for stronger employee engagement, a more attractive employer brand, better investor confidence, and also competitive advantage. And actually, the data backs this up. For example, studies have shown that high-performing companies that integrate ESG into strategy consistently outperform peers in revenue growth and shareholder returns. In other words, ESG is not in conflict with financial value. It enhances it, actually. A McKinsey research also showed that triple outperformers, so the companies excelling in 3 elements, growth, profitability, and ESG, actually achieve 2% higher annual shareholder returns than those focused solely on financial metrics. So I think the real shift here is probably a mindset one, from ESG as a tick box requirement to ESG as a strategic opportunity.
Where are the biggest ESG knowledge gaps, and who in the organization really needs the training?
It's about awareness, I guess, more or less. So last year we co-created and co-released a paper with Green and Good Consulting that outlined the ESG maturity journey. So helping organizations to assess where they currently sit in the sustainability journey, so the ESG curve, and what knowledge gaps are most pressing at each stage. And yeah, I mean, ESG training needs can be different depending on where you are in that journey. And I think it's important to embed ESG training as part of the growing into higher end of the maturity curve. At the early stage, the gaps in terms of knowledge are often very fundamental. So like, what does ESG mean? How does climate change, pollution, or waste connect to our operations? So courses like ESG fundamentals or climate literacy, circular economy, introductory sort of courses are often the right starting point to build baseline awareness across the whole workforce. As organizations progress to a more advanced end, the gaps become more kind of technical. So managers and leaders, for example, may need training in stakeholder engagement, supply chain impacts, social impacts, or reporting requirements to ensure that ESG initiatives translate into credible business outcomes. And that's why our ESG Global Training Suite was designed to to be flexible and accessible, with courses spanning foundational through to intermediate and advanced level. We've seen companies that we work directly with or through our partners successfully roll out basic ESG awareness models to all staff, while at the same time equipping leaders and managers and sustainability teams with more targeted and advanced courses as well. So in short, I think everyone in organization needs some level of understanding about ESG, about the purpose behind it, and also the ESG capability. But the what and the how also depend on where you are on the maturity curve and the need for individual organization as well.
You've delivered ESG training at scale. What's worked well, Celine, and what's been surprising?
That's a challenging question. But from what we heard from our customers and learners, what really works well, and I think this applies not just to ESG, but to all training rollout, is making the learning practical. So people don't want to see it through lectures on abstract frameworks. They want to see how the topic connects to their role and their day-to-day decisions. So when we design courses that are scenario-based, include role-specific content and bring in relatable case studies or small quizzes, the engagement are much higher. And in terms of surprise, the biggest surprise for us has actually been the market response to ESG training when it comes to ESG. So when we first launched the global ESG training suite, we expected the strongest uptake to come from Europe, given that the region has been a pioneer in ESG regulation and disclosure requirements. But what we saw was remarkably demand coming from Asia Pacific and the Middle East. So organizations in Singapore, Hong Kong, India have shown huge interest, and sometimes outpacing the demand in more established markets. So I think it just reflects a real shift. ESG is becoming a global business priority, and companies in emerging markets are keen to take a leap into best practice rather than wait to play catch up. So for me, that was both surprising and encouraging. It shows that ESG training is not just a nice to have thing, but an essential enabler for sustainable business growth across the globe.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights, and congratulations on getting this program off the ground over the last year or so. And ESG isn't just about compliance, and it's important it gets properly embedded into strategy and culture. Celine Dang, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This program is brought to you by Mass Marketing, fueling the future of L&D.